If you think you've seen birthday drama before, you haven't heard this. It happened right after the toast. Not my toast. I didn't get that far. I stood up with my glass raised, heart pounding, palms sweating through the stem. And before I even said a word, she leaned over and asked, "Why do you look so thoughtful?" I could have shrugged, smiled, laughed it off. Instead, I looked her dead in the eye, in front of 30 people, and said, "I'm just wondering how you had the nerve to invite your lover." Silence. Not TV silence. Not polite, awkward silence. I mean the kind of silence that drags. People blinking like they didn't hear right. Her best friend slowly lowering her phone mid-selfie. Even the bartender froze with a lime wedge in midair. She tried to laugh. Of course she did. Emery, that's. But I cut her off. No, don't. Not tonight. She didn't argue. She didn't run. She just stared. And that's when I knew there was someone. I didn't know who. Not yet. But I knew. And here's the wild part. I didn't even care about catching them anymore. I was done being the fool. Done second-guessing the way her phone always flipped face down when I walked in, or how she suddenly needed to volunteer on weekends. This wasn't some grand discovery. This was the explosion I'd been pretending wouldn't happen. And it started with a birthday toast that never got finished. The party didn't collapse instantly. That's what surprised me most. People awkwardly clinked glasses. Someone coughed. Her sister tried to change the subject by pointing out the cake. Meredith just stood there, smiling that awful tight-lipped smile she used when she didn't know what mask to wear. I left the rooftop without saying goodbye. I didn't drive. I didn't call anyone. I just walked. 4 blocks. Past closed shops and flickering street lamps. Through that weird hour of the night when everything feels paused, like the world's holding its breath, waiting for you to decide what kind of man you're going to be. By the time I got home, it was nearly 2 a.m. I took off my shoes, poured a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at my phone. Her phone was still connected to our shared cloud. She'd never disabled it. I'd never needed to check before. But now, I opened the Photos app, and there they were. Screenshots. Not hers, mine. Someone had taken screenshots of texts between Meredith and someone saved as R. I'd never noticed them before. But there they were, sitting in a hidden album I didn't even know existed. I tapped the first one. It was a thread from last month. Her. "You make me forget I ever said I do." Then his reply. "Then don't remember. Just come over." My throat went dry. I tapped the next one. A photo. Her, in his shirt. One I'd never seen before. She was sitting on a windowsill, hair wet, smiling at the camera with a kind of softness I hadn't seen in months. But what really gutted me was the audio message at the end. Just 12 seconds. Her voice, whispering. "He's planning something for my birthday. I feel guilty." Sort of. Then laughter. Not enough to stop, though. I put the phone down. Just placed it on the table like it was hot metal. And I sat there for hours. Not thinking. Not moving. Just breaking in slow motion. She hadn't just lied. She'd documented it. Stored it. Like a trophy. And I had no idea who R was. Not yet. But by the time the sun rose, I'd already made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront her again. Not directly. I was going to watch. Listen. Learn everything. If she wanted this to feel like a game, I'd make sure I finished it better than she ever expected. The strange part was how normal she acted the next morning. She came home around 11, holding an iced coffee and a brown paper bag like she'd just taken a walk through a sitcom. She asked if I wanted a muffin. I told her I wasn't hungry. She didn't press. Just nodded and went to take a shower. That's when I knew she wasn't afraid. Not of me. Not of being caught. And that was worse than if she'd come home screaming or crying. She wasn't panicking. She was confident I'd do what I always did. Let it slide. But I didn't. Instead, while the water ran upstairs, I opened her laptop. She'd forgotten to close it before the party. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe she just didn't think I'd look. Either way, her phone was still backed up to the Messages app. I started scrolling. I didn't look for full conversations. That would have taken hours. I looked for names. R. Rowan. Love. Baby. I searched everything. Nothing. It didn't make sense. Unless she deleted them. Or worse, she had a second phone. But then I noticed something else. A voicemail notification from 2 days ago. Unplayed. Now, I don't know what made me click it. Maybe I was hoping it was just some automated message from her dentist or a telemarketer. But the voice I heard wasn't a stranger. It was familiar. And it chilled me. It was her friend's husband. His name was Tyler. He worked in IT. Quiet guy. We'd had beers together once when the girls were inside watching some reality show. I remember him asking if Meredith and I were still good. Like he knew something he shouldn't have. The voicemail started with a sigh. Then, you told me he wouldn't find out. You said it was just once. And now you're back at his house like nothing happened? Silence. Then his voice cracked. You didn't just screw up your marriage, Meredith. You blew up mine, too. Click. I replayed it. Twice. 3 times. Just to be sure I was hearing what I thought I was hearing. And it suddenly hit me. R wasn't a name. It was a placeholder. An initial. It could have been anyone. Rowan wasn't real. It was a cover. But Tyler? He was real. And his voice had guilt in it. That's when the story began to bend into something uglier than I expected. This wasn't just some steamy affair with a stranger. This was closer. Quieter. Designed not to thrill, but to deceive. And worst of all, it meant people around me knew. Maybe for months. Maybe longer. I didn't know where to begin. But I knew who to start with. Tyler's wife. I had no idea what she knew, or what I'd be walking into. But the moment I left the house, I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man with nothing left to lose. I didn't call ahead. I just drove. Tyler and Cassie lived 15 minutes away, in a narrow blue townhouse with one dead porch light, and a rusted mailbox that never sat quite right on its hinge. I pulled up and sat in the car with the engine running. My fingers tapped the steering wheel like they were trying to play a song I hadn't learned yet. Part of me still hoped I had misunderstood the voicemail. That maybe Tyler was venting, or drunk, or just lashing out. But when Cassie opened the door and saw me standing there, her eyes didn't widen. She didn't even look surprised. She just exhaled and said, "It took you longer than I expected." That sentence wrecked me more than anything Meredith had ever said. I stepped inside, and she poured coffee without asking. She didn't sit close. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, "I found out 3 months ago. Tyler confessed one night after a fight. I think he wanted to be caught." I didn't know what to say. My throat was thick. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at me then, really looked. Would you have believed me? I wanted to say yes. But the truth was uglier. I might have denied it. I might have defended Meredith. I might have convinced myself that Cassie was just bitter. That's how far gone I'd been. How wrapped around Meredith's stories I was. Then Cassie leaned forward and dropped the real bomb. Tyler wasn't the first. My chest locked. What? She's been doing this longer than you think. Tyler told me it started at a conference 2 years ago. A guy from Atlanta. She told him she was separated. After that, it got easier. Safer. Tyler was just the first one stupid enough to leave a trail. I sat there, holding that mug like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My ears were ringing. My thoughts were boiling over. I wasn't just betrayed. I was erased. She had built an entire alternate life right under my nose. And now everyone, even Cassie, knew more about my wife than I did. But what she said next sent everything into a new dimension. She wasn't just cheating, Cassie said quietly. She was planning to leave you. But not for Tyler. For someone else. Someone who's been funding her side projects. I blinked. What projects? Cassie hesitated, then slid a folded paper across the table. An invoice. A deposit from an unknown consulting agency to Meredith's private account. I'd never seen the name before. But the amount? $5,000. Labeled Independent Creative Services. She rented an apartment under her maiden name last month, Cassie said. She's moving pieces behind your back. I didn't speak. Couldn't. The ground was shifting too fast. Meredith wasn't just having an affair. She was building a second life. And now I had to decide, do I confront her and watch her lie to my face again? Or do I take this further and start dismantling everything she built before she even knows I've caught up? I didn't sleep the night I left Cassie's house. I sat in my car for hours, engine off, cold seeping in through the windows. The city never really sleeps, but that night it felt like it was watching me, like it knew something I didn't. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not while she was there, curled up in our bed like none of this mattered. I drove to a motel instead. Cheap. Forgettable. The kind of place people go when they want to disappear for a few nights. And that's exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I called my job and told them I was sick. I wasn't. But I needed time. Not to cry. Not to feel. I needed time to plan. Meredith had spent months, maybe years, laying the groundwork for her exit. She had a separate account, a secret apartment, even a new identity ready to go. She didn't just cheat on me. She outmaneuvered me. So I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like someone about to burn the house down. Metaphorically, of course. First step? Information. I waited until she left for work and then returned to the house. I knew her routine by heart. She'd leave around 9:20. Grab coffee from that boutique place on Ashbury. Be at the office by 10. Always left her laptop charger at home, which meant she'd be back around lunchtime to grab it. That gave me 2 hours. I didn't waste a second. Her closet had a locked box I'd never seen before, matte black with a combination dial. She thought she was clever, but she forgot one thing. We used to share everything, including birthdays. For digits. Hers was too obvious. So I tried mine. Then hers. Then the day we met. Nothing. But when I typed in her mother's birthday, something she used as a password for years, the lock clicked. Inside were papers, letters, 2 burner phones, and a stack of old receipts rubber-banded together. Some of them were restaurant bills in neighborhoods she'd never mentioned. But one envelope stopped me cold. It was labeled, Dinner, November 3rd. I recognized the date instantly. That was the night we'd had a fight, a stupid one, and she told me she was going to Cassie's to cool off. We didn't speak for 2 days after that. She came home with no apology, no explanation. Just silence and a vague promise to try harder. The receipt showed she'd gone to a place called Langford's, a steakhouse downtown. She'd paid for 2 entrees, 1 bottle of wine, dessert, and she'd signed the check as Meredith Lane. Lane was her maiden name, but she didn't know I'd see this. So I made a choice. I called the restaurant and made a reservation. Same time, same table, if it was still available. Told them I was confirming an anniversary dinner for Mr. and Mrs. Lane. The hostess was confused at first. The name wasn't in the system. But she finally said, "Oh, that's the one with the corner booth, right? That guy who left early last time? That guy. He left early. And she stayed?" I hung up and stared at the wall for a full minute. Who was this man? Why was he walking out on her while she stayed behind? What kind of relationship was this? Suddenly, it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was something stranger. There were layers I hadn't considered. This wasn't a love affair. This was a transaction. And I had no idea who the real buyer was. I didn't go to the dinner. Not that night. I wanted to. I imagined myself sitting in that corner booth, pretending to be someone I wasn't, watching her walk in and freeze the moment she saw me instead of him. But no, I needed more. Showing up too early would burn the whole thing down before I even understood what I was dealing with. I needed leverage. So I waited. And I watched. 2 days later, I got it, completely by accident. It was around noon when I stopped at a gas station near my old college. I just needed coffee, maybe an excuse not to go home. As I walked out, a man brushed past me, paused, then turned. "You're Emery, right?" I froze. He was tall, well-dressed, older than me, maybe early 40s. Sharp haircut. Not the type of guy who accidentally bumps into people, the kind who plans things. "Sorry, do I know you?" I asked. He smiled in that way that wasn't really a smile. "Probably not. But I've heard your name more times than you'd like." I didn't move. Didn't blink. My heart felt like it had forgotten how to beat properly. "Tell Meredith I said hello," he added, then walked back to a black car I hadn't noticed until that second. Tinted windows, engine already running. He didn't look back. I didn't follow. I just stood there, coffee in hand, shaking like someone had yanked a trapdoor beneath me. That man wasn't a fling. He wasn't Tyler. He wasn't some random guy off a dating app. He knew me, knew her, and didn't care that I knew he knew. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was orchestration, and I wasn't sure if I was a victim in her story or a liability in his. 3 days passed without a word from Meredith. That wasn't normal. Even during our coldest weeks, she'd still toss me a text like a chore, "Don't forget to pay the water bill," or "I left food in the fridge." But this time, radio silence. No calls, no notes, no fake apologies. Just silence that felt too clean, too managed. I started to wonder if she knew what I knew. Had Tyler warned her? Had the guy from the gas station told her he saw me? Or worse, was this part of the plan? I needed something real. Not screenshots. Not rumors. Not receipts. Something I could touch. Something that connected her web of secrets to a name, a face, a reason. And then it showed up. I was leaving the house around 8 a.m., just pretending to live a normal life, when I noticed a small padded envelope wedged awkwardly in our mailbox. No return address. No stamp. Just my name, written in all caps with a thick black marker. Not Emery. Just EM. I opened it in the car, engine running, hands already sweating. Inside was a folded piece of printer paper and a USB drive. The note had no greeting. Just one line. You should have left when she gave you the chance. I sat there, frozen, until a jogger passed and gave me a weird look. Then I drove. Not to work. Not to a cafe. I needed somewhere no one would follow. I went to my brother's old apartment. He'd moved out 2 months earlier, but I still had the spare key. Empty, echoey, and perfect. I opened the laptop, inserted the USB, and waited. There were 4 video files, all time-stamped over the last 6 weeks. Each one was silent. No dialogue. Just security footage. Different locations. Restaurants. Parking garages. Office lobbies. And in every single one, Meredith. Not touching anyone. Not kissing anyone. Just meeting. Talking. Sometimes laughing. Sometimes handing off folders. But never lingering long. Always aware of where the cameras were. Always gone within 5 minutes. But it wasn't the meetings that rattled me. It was the men. 3 different ones. All dressed too well. All with the same leather document folder. All never making eye contact with anyone but her. And in the 4th video, she wasn't meeting someone. She was handing over a folder. To the same man who spoke to me at the gas station. He shook her hand. Whispered something. Then handed her a phone. That phone was identical to the one I found in her lockbox. I didn't know what kind of game she was in, but it wasn't about love, or lust, or even betrayal anymore. This was control, coordination, secrets that had currency, and somehow, I'd been living beside it, blind, for years. When Meredith walked through the front door 4 days later, she didn't find her usual world waiting. No candles, no cold shoulder, no shouting match, just quiet. I was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and an envelope in front of me. She froze when she saw it. Not the envelope, the calm. I gestured for her to sit. She did, slowly, like she expected a trap to spring from under the chair. For a moment, we didn't speak. Then I slid the envelope toward her. Before you lie again, just know, I've seen the footage. The USB, the men, the second phone, all of it. She didn't deny anything. Not this time. She let out a breath and whispered, I was going to tell you. When? After I was replaced? After I signed something without realizing? She shook her head. No, it wasn't about replacing you. I laughed, not bitterly, but genuinely. So what was it about, Meredith? And that's when she broke. Not into tears, but into the truth. The men were part of a shell project, a company funding gray area consulting deals for clients who didn't want paper trails. It started as a favor through a friend. Then it became income, power, a double life. But it was never about love. Not Tyler. Not the gas station man. Not anyone. It was about control, she said quietly. I felt invisible with you. Like I was watching my life instead of living it. That hurt. But for the first time in years, I understood something. This wasn't just betrayal. It was someone losing themselves and taking me with them. So I stood up, grabbed my keys, and said, you get to keep whatever this is. But I'm taking myself back. That night, I didn't go to a motel. I went to my sister's place. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without checking the other side of the bed. 2 months later, the divorce was done. Clean. No fights. No dragging it through the mud. I got the house. She moved into her apartment under her real name. No more aliases. No more shadow lives. And me? I started over. New job. New city. New peace. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming someone better while they're still figuring themselves out. So if you're still with someone who makes you feel small, quiet, suspicious, ask yourself, what would happen if you finally stopped waiting for them to be honest? Maybe the answer is the fresh start you've been too afraid to take.